Okay, we're here. Baruch Hashem, thank God for that. And we will be starting. It's a bit windy over here. We could calm things down over here. But we're learning. And I want to start with a bracha since this is Sunday morning Torah and coffee. So let's say a bracha. You could all answer amen. If you have your own coffee, please say a bracha as well, a blessing. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shehakoil nihiya bidvaroi, which means blessed are you God, King of the universe, that everything has come into being with your words. So first I want to begin with a prayer with the Shir HaMa'alot. I'm not sure if I could do this. I didn't bring a Tehillim. I'm not sure if I could do this without, if I go to a different program here without shutting this off. So I'll just say what I remember. The Shir HaMa'alot, Psalms 121. Shir HaMa'alot, Esa Einai El HaHarim, Me'ayin Yovai Ezri. I lift my eyes to the mountains, from where will my help come? Where will help come? Ezri, my help actually. Ezri Me'im Hashem. Ezri Me'im Adonai Osei Shamayim Haaretz. My help will come from God, the creator of heaven and earth. And the verse continues, Ezri Me'im Hashem Osei Shamayim Haaretz. And the verse continues that Hashem will shelter me both by day and night. May Hashem, just over Shabbat, I heard very sort of tragic news. A very, very dear friend lost his father-in-law to the virus. So that is very sad, and I'm sure at this point everybody knows somebody. May Hashem protect us. May Hashem send only health to all of mankind. And may it be so quickly, so we don't have to deal with this tsaros. Okay, so we want to talk about Pesach, and we want to talk about preparing for Pesach, and we want to talk about maybe an insight on Pesach as well, on the Haggadah, so maybe a little bit of mix. And I want to begin with a story which relates to the situation we're in, just to highlight, and by way of introduction a little bit, because the class today is about Pesach and how to prepare for Pesach in the challenging environment that we're in, which has pluses and minuses, as we will try to share as we go along. But I want to share the story so to underscore that some might think that because we are in this situation, we will have to we will have to compromise of some of the Jewish experience of the Pesach Seder. And so I want to share the following story to underscore that that's not the case, as I will explain in a moment. The story, I saw this story being shared by a fellow Chabad rabbi who said that his father, I believe, was once in a private audience with the Rebbe, Rabbi Menachem Mendel Schneerson, of blessed memory. And the Rebbe recalled a childhood memory of his childhood when in Yiddish we say the cholera, or the cholera, I think, disease broke out in his hometown. And one of the very prominent rabbis in his hometown, issued a decree that because of the health of the community, people have to eat on Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, the holiest day, is the only day that the Torah mandates and commands us to fast, and the punishment is very severe if you don't fast. As we all know, who does not fast on Yom Kippur? It's the holiest day of the year. And the community was very reluctant, and basically many were going to be what we would say, calling Yinglish, extra frum, extra religious, so as not to fast on Yom Kippur, as not to break the fast on Yom Kippur. So the Rebbe recalls that until the rabbi himself in shul, in the synagogue, on Yom Kippur, went ahead, he made a public bracha, like we just said before, and he ate in the synagogue in front of everybody. And when everybody saw that the rabbi himself, nobody was more religious than the rabbi, he was a very well-respected, prominent rabbi, that if he himself on Yom Kippur is eating, they all sat down and they ate on Yom Kippur. This was a story that the Rebbe related. And this underscores and tells us that, I think one of the very few times that the Torah tells us the word ma'od, which means very, we say v'haftat Hashem Elokecha, you should love the Lord your God b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, b'chol nafshecha, with all your soul, u'b'chol me'odecha, the word ma'od, with all your veriness. That's the literal translation of me'odecha. With all your veriness. What does that mean? You should love God very much. And over there, the Talmud discusses what this word ma'odecha means. But it's interesting that not often does the Torah say that term ma'od when it comes to a mitzvah. You should put on tefillin. You should keep kosher, Yom Kippur, whatever it is. I don't think the term ma'od. This is my observation over here. So you're welcome to disagree. But when it comes to taking care of your health and well-being, the Torah uses the term v'nishmartem me'od l'nafshosechem. You should guard and be careful, very ma'od, for your well-being and for your health and so on. The point being over here that we're not, when it comes this year Passover, and some of the things we're going to have to do, some of the things might not be able to be done because of the situation that we're in, the traditional large Seder. It's not that we're overcoming, or that's not the right word. It's not that we're foregoing or we're minimizing sort of our Jewish observance. On the contrary, when we take care of our health, and we do so within the guidelines of Jewish law, because everything has guidelines, but if we do so, we're actually enhancing our Jewish experience and enhancing Hashem's will, because God wants us to take care. God directly tells us, "V'nishmartem me'od," you should be very careful. So that's by way of introduction as we discuss this year's Passover. And again, I want to encourage, I'm told that the wind is ruining the sound. If that's the case, that's what I see here in one of the comments. If that's the case, that the wind is ruining the sound, please, somebody, if I hear that from another person, that the wind is ruining the sound, I will get up and move to a different spot where it perhaps is less windy. Anyway, so that's the v'nishmartem me'od l'nafshosechem. Let's talk about Pesach. We spoke about it a little bit last week. And I want to discuss maybe one or two insights into the Passover Haggadah, some beautiful insights, and take that message for us today as well. So, in preparing for Pesach, in the situation that we're in, okay, I see another comment. Yes, it is that it's disturbing. So, bear with me. Let's take a walk together, and I'll go to a different spot where hopefully the wind is less disturbing. Okay? Although I like my spot here. It's like on my little dock. But what should I tell you? I don't want the wind to disturb. Hopefully I could carry everything here together. Ein minut. Give me just a moment. Sorry for the shakiness over here. We will move over to a different spot. Bear with me. Yeah. Okay, thank you for taking a walk with me over here as we walk to a different spot. And then you guys will give me the feedback to tell me if it's still as windy or if we still have the same problem. Okay, let me move over here. It's a little hotter over here, but it is what it is, right? There's much bigger problems that people are dealing with. So let me tighten this up. So es fällt nicht. Here we go. Let me turn it this way so you have a little bit of a nicer view rather than just a wall. Okay, you let me know if this is better. Okay, so let's continue. Gegangen weiter. So let me take my agoda out. Sorry for one more little shake up because I put my agoda so I could carry everything. My apologies for all these disturbances, but it is what it is. Okay, I think we're good to go. Now. Let's go right there. Okay, so in preparing for Pesach, I want to say, first of all, there are wonderful links out there. There's just wonderful links. I shared a link on the hurricane. I shared a link on some of the WhatsApp. I shared a link in Facebook. There are wonderful links that give you exactly what you need to prepare for Pesach. But here's a bit of a list that let's go through. So in order to prepare the Seder plate, you guys all know this, so I'll go through this very quickly. You need to have the eggs, you need to have the shank bones, which is you could get today. It shouldn't be a problem if you go to your kosher store. You need to have the maror, which I was told is also available. You need to have the lettuce, which you have together with the white bitter herbs. I want to also make it very clear so you guys know that white horseradish that you buy in the store is not kosher for the Seder maror obligation. It is kosher for Pesach if it says kosher for Passover, because again, like other things that we use Pesach night, it cannot be something that has other ingredients mixed into it. And the white horseradish that you have is not pure horseradish. It's horseradish over there with vinegar, with preservatives, or whatever else they put in there. So you cannot fulfill your obligation. Just know this. You have to actually take raw maror, raw root, which they sell in the stores. You got to grind it, and that's your maror. You could also have lettuce. So romaine lettuce is also part of the maror, and the charoses will be available in the kosher stores. Otherwise, you could do what I do. We make at our home, just as a side note, because Pesach, we are extra careful to make things that are more than just kosher, but they're extra kosher. Basically, at the Friedman home, because this is what I saw by my parents and by my in-laws, almost everything that's possible is all homemade. The maror is homemade, the fish is homemade, and basically almost everything we eat from A to Z is homemade just during this week of Pesach. So it's not difficult to make maror. You just got to buy the root and you got to grind it. It's just that there's a lot of tears while you do so. So that's that. And the charoses you could also make yourself. Charoses ingredients is pretty simple. You can make it yourself, and that is what you need for the Seder plate. Of course, you need matzah. Matzah. The best matzah to use is the shmura matzah. And to just briefly explain, for those who might not know, is that the shmura matzah is the wheat, as we know, cannot come into contact with water. It comes in contact with water and then arises. Now, by strict halacha, that is from when it's made into flour, actually. Not just the wheat, but flour. However, shmura matzah is such that from the moment that they cut the wheat, they make sure that it does not come in contact with water, so it goes the extra mile. So if you use Yehuda matzah, some of that is also shmura matzah. They sell it in the stores, Costco and so on, or you could call us at Chabad. We have matzah. We'll be glad to share matzah with you. We have the round matzah, the traditional matzah. Again, as I mentioned last week, I want to do this quickly, is that my one caution is, in order to fulfill the obligation of matzah at the Seder table, you cannot use flavored matzah, egg matzah, chocolate-covered matzah. You could have that as part of your meal, but not as part of the obligation to have matzah. Now, how much matzah do you need? So if you're buying matzah, shmur matzah, how much matzah do you need? Well, as you know, under the Cairo, we put 3 matzahs. That's the tradition. But in order to fulfill the obligation, every single time you do a biblical obligation, basically, usually the amount is akazayit, which means in Hebrew means like an olive, and on a practical level, if you take the round matzahs, the round standard shmura matzah, it's just under a half a matzah. It depends how thin or how thick. It's just under a half a matzah. And this is what you need to know, that in order to fulfill your obligation, you have to eat the matzah without anything else. In other words, you can't drink it down, unless you're really elderly and your teeth and it's extremely difficult for you. Okay, but other than that, you cannot drink it down. You have to have matzah, pure matzah, without anything in between, without anything with it, including salt. We're accustomed to maybe have salt with the matzah. You could do so when you're eating just matzah for matzah, just because you like matzah. But for the obligation of Passover night, nothing else, just matzah, no interruptions. You got to eat that little bit less than half a matzah straight, without in between, not talking, and you're supposed to eat it leaning, as we know. Again, I'm going through the basics. I want to encourage you, I'm going to say this several times throughout, there are links which go through the orders in a very nice way, and you could definitely do that on your own. If you have a question, please post it over here. I'm going to try to notice the question and address it. Okay, next. The other thing that's very important to know is, of course, the 4 cups. Now, each cup, which is a rabbinical mitzvah for the night, the obligation is to have at least, there's some various opinions, a 3 ounce or 3.5 ounce is the basic minimum that you need to have. Now, meaning, you could find, now the other thing is that it is best. When I say best, this means it's not the absolute necessity, but it's best that you drink the entire cup. Now, if you have a cup that's only 3.5 ounces, then for sure you need to drink the entire cup, because if you don't drink the entire cup, you have not fulfilled your obligation. But if you have a larger cup, which is let's say 7-ounce cup or 5-ounce cup, then you need to drink at least the 3.5 ounces. It is best to drink at least most of the cup, and it's even bestest to drink the entire cup. So if you want to drink the entire cup, which is proper for the 4 cups, then you should probably make sure to have a smaller cup. Again, to simplify that, you need to drink at least, I'm just keeping it safe, 3.5 ounces, which is not a lot, of wine or grape juice and so on, and you should make sure to have that before Pesach. So that's with regards to the wine. The moror, again, the measurement is a kazayas. So between the lettuce and the rubbed part horseradish, it needs to be again a kazayas, which is also somewhere around the same measurement as we said with regards to the other things. Now, I want to highlight also that an important aspect which has become more relevant in the last couple of years with daylight savings time and so on starting earlier is that sometimes it's very important to keep the kinderlach, to keep the children there for the Seder. That's most important. However, you cannot begin the Seder, at least the mitzvahs part of the Seder, cannot begin before night, before dark, which this year is probably going to be around 8-10, which is kind of late. So, because before that it's not Pesach. And like every mitzvah has its time, just like you cannot fulfill the obligation of having a bris, let's say on the 6th day, it has to wait till the 8th day. You cannot sit in the sukkah day before and fulfill your obligation before the Sukkot. Like everything else, you don't get married the day before you're supposed to get married. You get the example. So I know it's tempting to start the Seder at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, so the kids it's not past their bedtime, etc. However, Pesach comes once a year or twice a year for the 2 Seder nights. You have to do the Seder after dark. But I could give you a little bit of a solution here, which is you could start the Seder in terms of sitting around the table, talking, discussing, schmoozing, but you have to fulfill the obligation part of the Seder after dark. So if you want to start before, sit, schmooze with your kids, maybe let them talk a little bit, be excited, give them their presents for the Afikomen, although you can't have the Afikomen actually. Whatever it is, be creative. But you have to make the Kiddush and say the Haggadah, which is a biblical obligation to say the story. Eat the matzah, eat the maror, all that has to be done after dark. So imagine you're taking your kids out to a wedding. Sometimes you do things after bedtime. It's only twice a year for the Seder. If you have questions about that, you're welcome to ask, but that's an important thing. So the matzah, all that has to be done after dark. To go through the Seder order in detail, everybody has Haggadahs. You could also download Haggadahs online. If you go to the link that we shared, there's a link there where you could download a printable Haggadah, and that's fantastic. You could do so. So I don't want to go more on that. I don't think it's necessary. If you're having the Pesach Seder yourself this year, we'll talk about that in a moment a little bit more. You also still do ask the 4 questions out loud. because we're not only asking each other, which is part of the biblical obligation, is to actually ask, according to many authorities. You also ask when you're having the Seder all by yourself. I was asked, this is an important question, I was asked by someone, he might be listening to the class right now, I don't know. I was asked by somebody whether you can, whether we will be having the Seder via technology, via Zoom or Facebook Live. The answer to that is no. I know there was a answer circulated by some Orthodox rabbis from Israel. They themselves, this is important, please pay attention to this. They themselves have clarified, I believe most of them, you cannot, I'm not going to go into all the reasons now, you cannot use technology on Shabbat or on the Chag on Yom Tov. We will not be having a live Zoom or Facebook or YouTube Seder on Pesach. It is not allowed. The only time when it is allowed, is if God forbid, if not God forbid, let me step back for a second. If you have a person who is ill, whether it be physically or mentally, and them not having that communication is life-threatening, again, it's life-threatening. In that case, you could have a live Seder with them. That's the underlying caveat, if it's life-threatening. Even if it's a doubt life-threatening, because for pikuach nefesh, as I said in the beginning, for pikuach nefesh, for saving one's life, we do everything and anything. So that's the only situation where we will have, where you can, with a member of your family, have it live digital during the Chag. Okay, now, I see that a very special Rebbitzin, alumnus of Chabad of Coral Springs, Rebbitzin Shachar Danin, Rebbitzin Shachar Banin, who does excellent work in Venice. I'm mentioning here, she's joining us here for the class. She mentioned to me something about the Rebbe and his own Seder. Maybe I'll talk about it at the end of the class. And she does do excellent work. We're very, very proud of her, what she's become and what she's doing in life, being there in Venice and really being an excellent Chabad Rebbitzin over there. So that's that. I wanted to share a little bit of a Passover insight. Maybe you could share that to Seder. And it's sort of apropos because one of our favorite parts of the Seder, I mentioned one thought last week, but I'm going to mention another one or two thoughts this week. Again, in the limited time that we have. The Haggadah, one of our most the most favorite parts of all of us on the Haggadah is the four children, the four sons. And it is interesting that we begin the Seder, we begin by introducing the four sons with the following statement. I'll say it in Hebrew and then I'll translate. Baruch HaMakom, Baruch Hu. Blessed is the omnipresent one, blessed is he. Baruch Shenatan Torah Lamo Yisrael, blessed is he who has given Torah to the Jewish people, to his nation Israel. And then it right away says, Keneged Arboim Bonim Dibra Torah, the Torah speaks about four children. Echad Chocham, the wise son, the Rasha, the Echad Tom, the Echad She'eni Yodei Lishal, and the one that doesn't know how to ask. A couple of insights here. First and foremost, this introduction, Baruch HaMakom, blessed is God, and blessed is the one who gave us the Torah. That should be perhaps an introduction in the beginning. I mean, like, why is that an introduction right here before we begin the Seder? Before we talk about the four sons. There's various answers. This is my own answer. I don't remember seeing this anywhere, so you could take it or leave it. But I think the Torah is telling us that since the most important thing when we celebrate Pesach, when we celebrate the Seder, the birth of our nation, the continuity of our nation, is our kindalach, is our dear children. So when we're about to speak to our kindalach, we say, blessed, thank you HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank you God. Children could be a burden. To insert a little humor here, even though many are really sad, but you got to have humor. It's the way it is, just to get through this difficult period. So we've all seen all these different memes. I mean, there's memes. That a fellow is waking up in the morning. He writes, and I see my neighbor scrubbing off "My child is an honor student" bumper sticker from the back of his car. After teaching his kid for a week in his house, he realizes his kid is not perfect. The teacher wasn't always wrong. Or just to mention one other one, and the other meme is, and just like that, prayers and spanking are back in the schools. So these are all, cutes, but they have, there's a reality to them. We see our kinderlach, and sometimes I know somebody who said to me, "Rabbi, I don't want to have kids. They're a burden. They're a burden." And I mean, that deserves a whole other discussion. We're not going to go there in detail, but we start, before we talk about our kinderlach, we say, Baruch HaMokim Baruch Hu. Thank you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We bless him. It's the biggest blessing that we have, and the most meaningful thing we could do in our life is to educate, to inspire, to be there for our kinderlach, to be there for our children. Baruch HaMokim. We start this off and saying, thank you, God. That's one thing. And then we say, thank you, God, that he's given us the Torah. Because the most surest, the best way to make sure that we raise our kinderlach, that we raise our children in a healthy way, is that we deal with their soul, with their personality, their being, their spiritual being, their core, and that comes through Torah. We are so blessed that God has given us the Torah. Baruch Shenasan Torah. Blessed is the one who gave us the Torah, because that gives us such a clear, beautiful, meaningful path to live our lives, and as a result to be a role model for our children and to guide our children, so that despite all the isms that are out there, they can be raised on a strong foundation that goes back for thousands of years, and that's created a healthy, meaningful, beautiful family. So that's one insight here into the introduction. Let's go a little bit further, and hope you could bear with me. I want to share a couple of other quick thoughts, and then we will conclude, and hopefully we'll continue next time. So we start with the Chacham, with the wise one. Okay, he comes first, we understand. And the opening phrase is Chacham Mahu Oimeir. In each of these phrases we say Mahu Oimeir. What does he say? Rasha Mahu Oimeir. What does the Rasha say? And there's a beautiful word, a known insight from the previous Rebbe, who says Chacham Mahu Kama Oimeir, which means like this: a Chacham Mahu, who is, or what is a Chacham? It's Kama Oimer, in the way he speaks. To use the language of Maimonides, the Rambam, a person is recognized in the manner that they speak. They speak in a refined way, refined language, which has become somewhat of a scarce commodity by many, that the language that we use is so coarse sometimes. Chacham Mahu, a person can be recognized, whether he's a Chacham or a Rasha, in Oimer, in the way he speaks, which is so important, and that could be elaborated in its own. Will suffice for what we just said. The Chacham and the Rasha are next to each other. Commentaries point out to teach us both ways. A Chacham, the wise, good son, should never forget about the Rasha. He's obligated to make sure to try to influence positively the person who sadly is not there yet. On the other hand, the Chacham has to remain humble, because you could never know. You could never be sure with yourself, and therefore you always have to be on guard. Two other quick insights. Then we'll conclude with a little story based on what Shachar reminded us. And one thing, the last of the sons is She'eni Yedei Elisha, the person who doesn't know how to ask. Why is that the last? Shouldn't the Rasha be the last? Shouldn't the wicked son be the last? And here we have a beautiful lesson that the Rebbe points out, that ignorance is not bliss. That to a real extent, even the Rasha who is wicked, but he is knowledgeable, and if he decides to change his ways, he could do so in a moment. I would say, and this is not meant as a criticism, this is meant as an urging, as a way to inspire us, that the challenge of American Jewry, for the most part, and their lack of involvement in Judaism, at least a large percent that we have to try to bring closer, is not that they're wicked, God forbid. They're not. I would say the challenge of the majority of Jewish America is that they don't have the knowledge of their Jewish tradition. They don't know. Their heart is in the right place, but they just don't know. And if you don't know, you can't do it. You don't even know what you need to do. But we invite all these 4 children to our Seder table because it's our obligation to reach out to all these 4 children. But the She'enu Yodei Lishel is last, because if you don't even know, then where do you go? Where do you start? So it's our obligation to make people first aware that they don't know. As a lot of times when I talk to youngsters, I ask them, what do you know more about? American history or Jewish history? And typically the answer is they know more about American history, which is wonderful that they know American history. I love this country. This country is the greatest blessing God has given us. But I ask them the following question: what's more your core, that you're an American or a Jew? America, by definition, is a beautiful place that allows you to be who you are. So who are you? You're a Jew. You could technically, wherever you're going to move, you're a Jew. You can't become non-Jew. It's your core, it's your soul. So why is it that you know far less about your Jewish essence and identity than you know about your American history? You should know about your American history. Fantastic. But you know what America is? The place which allows you to be who you are. Who are you? I don't know. I know a little bit. Einei Dei Lishel. On the other hand, conversely, the Rebbe has also a very beautiful insight, and this is to inspire the more observant, the religious, what we might call the religious, so I don't even like that term, I would say the more observant Jew. Einei Yodei Lishel. He doesn't know how to ask on a deeper level, beyond the simple level, could also mean that he is so complacent and does his Judaism so much just out of habit. He could be religious. He puts on tefillin every day. He davens. He goes to synagogue. He's very pious. He wears a hat and a jacket and a beard and he looks the look. But he does it just all out of habit. He doesn't know how to ask, meaning he has no questions. Life is good. He's just comfortable. He's not searching. There's no spiritual energy over there. There's no wanting to become better. There's no wanting to improve. Einei Dei Lishel. I have no questions. Why? I just do it. I wake up in the morning. I brush my teeth. Okay, I say Modani. I brush my teeth. I whatever's. Eat kosher. My parents ate kosher. I ate kosher. I don't even have a temptation, which is fine in that sense. However, I have no questions in the negative sense. I have nothing that excites me or urges me or irks me to improve, to connect to God on a deeper level, on a more meaningful level. I have no questions. So the Seder is, we're talking to that part of ourselves. The Rebbe says that the 4 sons, also, since we hear about the 4 sons, within ourselves we have the 4 sons. There's times where we are the Chacham, we're the good son, the obeying son and daughter. Chacham, a lot of times the Torah talks in male, but it means male and female. So I want to make that clear. There's times when we're the Rasha, when we have questions and we challenge and we're not in sync with God. There are times when we're tam, we're ignorant or just silly. There are times when we don't know. We all have that 4 within us, and we all have to take the lesson from the Seder table to address the 4 within us ourselves. So this year especially, that's apropos about the 4 sons within ourselves, because there will be people that will be spending the Seder just by themselves, maybe just with their immediate family, or even totally by themselves. I mean, we have that. We might have elderly parents. So I want to, and that's very difficult. On a personal note over here, this is my Facebook friend, so I'm not, we're talking to friends over here. On a personal note, I have my mother. She's stuck in Crown Heights. And Crown Heights has been very heavily hit because on Purim, a lot of the social distancing was not yet strongly announced and encouraged. That was like 2 days before that, before the NBA sort of closed down. And then from there, the country became much more aware and so on. So during Purim, when everybody gets together on so many levels to hear the Megillah, much of the infection happens. And Crown Heights has been very, very terribly hit, sadly, amongst many of the other religious communities in New York. My mother is stuck at home. We're telling her you cannot go out. Elderly lady, and she's begging to be able to have a Seder with somebody. So and I'm sure many of you have this situation. So I want to share an article that was just posted, and Shachar reminded me about this, that the Rebbe, who was perhaps the most public person as a Jewish leader in his last generation, or in our generation, was also the most private person. He really, really did not like personal honors. And there's so many examples for that. And for who knows how many years, for 50 years, he basically would have every Shabbos meal just with his wife. He could have had, other Hasidic Rebbes, and not to put them down, they're all fantastic, but other Hasidic Rebbes would have, for their Shabbos meal or for this, they would have a lot of ceremony and thousands of people. The Rebbe could have had tens of thousands of people every Shabbos meal. He only was in public for farbringen, to learn, to teach. But anything else family related was always done in the privacy just with his wife. When his wife passed away, and I remember this because I was a yeshiva bacher, the Rebbe's personal secretary said to the Rebbe, "I'll stay here with you for the Seder." The Rebbe said, "No, I'll have it by myself." And there was some bachrim, some younger colleagues of mine, who when they came to Eliyahu Navi, they saw the Rebbe opening his door, welcomed Eliyahu Navi. So the point being, and the Rebbe had his Seder just by himself, God, Eliyahu Navi. So the point being is that this year, if you're by yourself or just your family, God put us in this situation. Pesach, you're supposed to have guests. We start to say to Kol Dichman, whoever wants, come and join us. But this is the situation we're in. And there's a saying in Yiddish, HaYid is Kemel Nisht Alein. We are never alone. In Yiddish, the translation that a Jew is never alone, but that goes for all mankind, because God is with us. And this year, we could pay attention to what the Haggadah tells us. There is a downside when you have all family. So you start talking about sports and the brisket and alle gute Sachen, which is beautiful to talk about family and have a good time together. It's beautiful as long as you don't get distracted from the meaning of what the Seder is about. But this year, there really is for all of us, I'm talking to myself, I'm talking to those listening, there really is the opportunity to make the Seder table, whether it's by yourself or with your immediate family, to really make it meaningful, to really connect. And we're not alone, because Pesach, we're celebrating, we're together with ourselves, we're together with our ancestors, we're together with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with God Almighty. We could do so, we could be successful in doing so. I want to venture to say that if you take that challenge, you and I and all of us, this will end up being the most meaningful Pesach that you've ever had. The most memorable, both for yourselves, for your kindalach. This will be the most meaningful Seder. And in that merit, just by resolving so, Hashem, God Almighty, will send us blessing. And we will again be able to be all together as a people, as a nation, both Jews and non-Jews alike, of course, that God should protect us all immediately. There should be no more illness. We shouldn't have to go through this sadness. We should stay strong in our faith, upbeat, have bitachon, have faith, and in that merit Hashem will protect us. Everybody, thank you for joining. If you have questions, please send us the questions, and we'll try to address it at the next class. Sei gesund, we say in Yiddish.